Hey everyone, take a look at these news headlines. What do you notice? Pause the video and share your ideas. All of the news headlines warn the public about disease outbreaks that could be very dangerous. News stations report on disease outbreaks so that people know how to protect themselves from being infected. Meet Guadalupe. He's an epidemiologist. Epidemiologists are health professionals who investigate patterns and causes of diseases. Without epidemiologists, our world might not have data on how diseases spread from person to person or how many people are killed by a specific disease each year. Right now, Guadalupe is investigating the spread of a widespread disease, influenza. While the flu is not deadly in most cases, it is extremely contagious. In fact, from October 2019 to January 2020, over 8 million people in the U.S. went to the doctor or hospital for treatment of influenza symptoms. How crazy is that? Right now, Guadalupe is analyzing a data set on influenza. A data set refers to a list of information on a topic. In this case, the data set is about the people who have been infected with influenza in the United States. Guadalupe's data set has a lot of numbers. To understand what all of the numbers mean, he creates a scatterplot. A scatterplot is a type of graph that has an x-axis and a y-axis, along with dots that represent individual data points. Guadalupe likes using scatterplots because they can show correlations between two variables. A correlation is a relationship between two types of data. Take a look at this scatterplot. It shows the correlation between a person's height and weight. This scatterplot shows that the taller a person is, the more likely they are to weigh more. It has a positive correlation, which means as a person's height goes up, so does their weight. Guadalupe starts to create his scatterplot using his influenza data. To create his scatterplot, Guadalupe first writes out a title: Age versus number of days with fever in patients with influenza. Then Guadalupe labels each axis. He labels the y-axis age in years, and he labels the x-axis days with a fever. Next, he adds numbers to each axis of the scatterplot. He wants the age axis to be able to show the ages of 1 to 100. That's a lot of numbers. He knows he cannot fit all 100 numbers on his axis, so he decides to count by tens to list the numbers 0 to 100. This way, he can fit all of his data. He wants the days with a fever axis to be able to show the days from 0 to 14. He is able to fit all 14 numbers on the days axis. Next, Guadalupe starts to plot his data. Here are the first 5 data points he wants to plot. He starts with the first data point. He locates the patient's age on the y-axis and the number of days the patient had a fever on the x-axis. He then places a mark on the spot of the graph that represents a 12-year-old who had a fever for 3 days. He then graphs the next data point, a 73-year-old patient who had a fever for 6 days. Once Guadalupe has his first 5 data marks, he starts to think about whether these 5 data points are representative of the entire population. For example, will every 73-year-old that gets the flu have a fever for exactly 6 days? He realizes he needs way more data to draw a conclusion about whether a person's age and the number of days they are sick from influenza are related. He decides to keep collecting data so that he can add it to his scatterplot. Once he collects more data points, he will add this new data to his scatterplot to see if he can find a correlation between a patient's age and the number of days they have a fever. Now it's your turn to think like an epidemiologist. Let's go on an adventure.